In the tradition of Malcolm X, peace be unto you. I was watching a documentary recently about the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And during the Kennedy tenure as president, Allen Dulles was the head of the CIA, but he was fired by JFK because JFK believed truthfully that the CIA had lied to him about the whole Cuban Fidel Castro issue and had set him up to fail at the Bay of Pigs, an attempted coup of the government of Cuba at that time. So he fired Allen Dulles, and after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and here's the irony here, Allen Dulles was appointed to be head of the Warren Commission, or to play a significant role in determining who killed JFK. The conclusion of the Warren Commission was that it was a lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald. And there was a lot of fabrication about his background that supported their conclusion. And as you know, the investigation of the assassination of JFK was just a hot mess from the beginning to the end. Now, in the course of this documentary, Allen Dulles was talking to a colleague of his about the number of pages of the Warren Commission report, and that there were many contradictions in it, many false statements, a lot of made-up evidence, even down to the autopsy of JFK's body. And this is what he said. He said that he thought they didn't have to worry about anybody discovering the false evidence, the lies. And he said this because people don't read anymore. In other words, who's going to go to the public congressional library or access that information and read over 1,000 pages? And they always do that. You know, sometimes when they make law, they'll make sure there's 900, 1,000, 2,000 pages, and they'll stick what are called riders. They'll stick riders into the legislation, which has nothing to do with the reason for the legislation, but is put in the legislation so that special interest groups can ride into law. And that is exactly what Allen Dulles was referring to. He was saying in so many words, I'm not worried. People, they don't read, but the truth is, people never really read a lot of books and articles, and people generally don't keep up with what's going on in their government. They think they elect House of Representatives and senators to represent their interests, but everybody knows today that the moment they get in government, they flip and are in league with special interest groups to promote corporate interests, et cetera, et cetera. And if you think of foreign policy is a manifestation of corporate interests. And the money that is made by contracting with the government to supply the government with X, Y, and Z is the motivation behind these lobbyists who gain control of people in the House and people in the Senate. That's a reason, in fact, that Feinstein will not leave vacate, retire her office. It's because they are trying to manipulate someone into her seat who will continue to support the lobbyists that she's connected to. It's all hustle and flow. Congress is hustle and flow. The Supreme Court is hustle and flow. And the executive office is hustle and flow. I understand that Biden is going to sign, if he hasn't signed already, this new budget that sets a new debt ceiling. I knew when this whole charade started how it was going to end. They've done this many times about the budget. The budget comes, oh, there's a deadline, and if we don't get this passed, we're all going to be in trouble. It's all hustle and flow. But the reason that they're never put in check is because the public doesn't read, the public doesn't pay attention. And they're into their holidays, they're into their parties, they're into their hedonistic lifestyle, and or they're taught through their churches or schools that your government can do no wrong and that it is doing its business in your interest, and it's not. How many billions of dollars has this government given to Ukraine in weaponry and cash? And they're going to cut the budget. They're going to cut people off SNAP. They're not going to help students who collectively owe over $1 trillion in debt to finance companies to get an education, which ought to be free. Education ought to be free. And that money that's being spent in Ukraine and the money that was spent in the Afghan war and the Iraqi war should have been used to educate every American who's qualified to go to college for free. Why? Because it's their money. Because it's their parents' money. How have things become so twisted? It's not really a complex problem or question to answer. It does reduce to some very fundamental realities about the average man and woman on the street that they always appeal to when it comes time to get elected. And that's hustle and flow, because there's an electoral college that sits in the background ready to make a decision about who should be in office, the office of president, even if it is inconsistent with what you have chosen. So it's all hustle and flow, and it will remain hustle and flow until the fourth power, that is the citizens of the United States, brings this hustle and flow to an end. Only the fourth power in America, the fourth branch of government, can stop this. There should be an age limit for holding an office in Congress, and there should be an age limit for holding office as president, and there should be an age limit for being on the Supreme Court. I mean, come on. You've got people 89, approaching 90, entangled with dozens of lobbyist special interest groups for decades, and you don't understand why it's so hard to change anything. You don't understand why it's virtually impossible to get good legislation that is in the interest of the American people passed in Congress. And you can't understand why Pelosi is supporting Feinstein, who cannot get out of her wheelchair, who cannot even do her daily tasks. She probably can't type. And there are many others that by age alone should be asked to retire. Give them a pension, let them go, get them out, because you need younger people with a new vision that is spawned by their idea to make government work in the interest of the people, whether they read books, whether they know what's going on or not. They are supposed to be there looking out for the people, and they're not. They're all hustlers. They're all ambitious, clever little hustlers. And you need to get them out. If you don't, it's nearing the time when it'll be too late. I mean, can you imagine, and I'm going to end with this point. In Atlanta, I understand they're building a cop city. Can you imagine that that's a real sugar-coated way to say they're building a police fortress, a fort, a police fortress in the city. And that will spread all over the nation, because what is coming down the line, according to the United States Defense Department, is the loss of control of the population of the United States. In other words, because the people, the fourth branch of government, has not done their due diligence to change things now, they know they're going to need extra police power, extra police authority to suppress public uprisings in the near future. We're talking the next 5 to 8 years. So we're talking about the movement toward a totalitarian state. One of my favorite historians, Arnold Toynbee, said that in a time of troubles, such as the America is in right now, the empire is collapsing. Just like the empire that Great Britain had. The sun never sets on the British Empire. Look at England now. They're just in the pits. And that's where they're going to stay. Totally dependent on Uncle Sam. America, the American empire that was dreamt of over 100 years ago by people like Woodrow Wilson, it's over. And they're getting ready to implement a totalitarian state. And part of that will be the suppression of your constitutional rights, the Bill of Rights, free speech, freedom of the press. That's gone. That is gone. The news media is a puppet on the lap of government now. And you can't speak freely on the internet. And it's going to get worse. People will be jailed again as they were 100 years ago for speaking truth to power. And don't ever think for one moment that God is involved with this nation. The governments at the federal level, the state level, the county level, they are all godless. And I'm not just trying to berate people. They are absolutely godless in their orientation about harming people overseas and at home. I am Dr. Stephen Nur Ahmed. Peace be unto you.